The Lord be with you. I'm Deacon Keith Fournier, and our first reading is taken from the book of Genesis. It happened sometime later that God put Abraham to the test. "Abraham, Abraham," he called. "Here I am," he replied. God said, "Take your son, your only son, your beloved Isaac, and go to the land of Moriah, where you are to offer him as a burnt offering on one of the mountains which I shall point out to you." When they arrived at the place which God had indicated to him, Abraham built an altar there and arranged the wood. Then he bound his son and put him on the altar, on top of the wood. Abraham stretched out his hand and took the knife to kill his son. But the angel of Yahweh called to him from heaven. "Abraham, Abraham," he said. "Here I am," he replied. "Do not raise your hand against the boy," the angel said. "Do not harm him. For now I know you fear God. You have not refused me, your own beloved son." Then looking up, Abraham saw a ram caught by its horns in the bush. Abraham took the ram and offered it as a burnt offering in place of his son. The angel of Yahweh called Abraham a second time from heaven. "I swear by my own self," Yahweh declares, "that because you have done this, because you have not refused me your own beloved son, I will shower blessings on you and make your descendants as numerous as the stars of heaven and the grains of sand on the seashore. Your descendants will gain possession of the gates of their enemies. All nations on earth will bless themselves by your descendants, because you have obeyed my command." And our response is taken from Psalm 116. "My trust does not fail, even when I say I am completely wretched. Costly in Yahweh's sight is the death of his faithful. I beg you, Yahweh, I am your servant, and my mother was your servant. You have undone my fetters. I shall offer you a sacrifice of thanksgiving and call on the name of Yahweh. I shall fulfill my vows to Yahweh, witnessed by all his people, in the courts of the house of Yahweh, in your very heart, Jerusalem." And our second reading is taken from the letter of the Apostle Paul to the Romans. After saying this, what can we add? If God is for us, who can be against us? Since he did not spare his own son, but gave him up for the sake of all of us, then can we not expect that with him he will freely give us all his gifts? Who can bring any accusation against those that God has chosen? When God grants saving justice, who can condemn? Are we not sure that it is Christ Jesus who died, yes, and more, who was raised from the dead and is at God's right hand, and who is adding his plea for us? And a reading from the Holy Gospel according to St. Mark. 6 days later, Jesus took with him Peter and James and John and led them up a high mountain on their own by themselves. There, in their presence, he was transfigured. His clothes became brilliantly white, whiter than any earthly bleacher could make them. Elijah appeared to them with Moses, and they were talking to Jesus. Then Peter spoke to Jesus. "Rabbi," he said, "it is wonderful for us to be here. So let us make 3 shelters, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah." He did not know what to say. They were so frightened. And a cloud came, covering them in shadow. And from the cloud there came a voice. "This is my Son, the beloved. Listen to him." Then suddenly, when they looked round, they saw no one with them anymore, but only Jesus. As they were coming down from the mountain, he warned them not to tell anyone what they had seen, until after the Son of Man had risen from the dead. They observed the warning faithfully, though among themselves they discussed what rising from the dead could mean. The Gospel of the Lord.